Hello, I'm Bob the Booker and welcome to my channel. And today I wanted to talk a bit about the books that I've been reading this week. Apologies, there is no such thing apparently as natural light currently in the UK. And so I've been sort of waiting to film this in various different parts of the day, none of which have really had much sunshine. So this is kind of what we're currently working with, but let's go with that. But yeah, really excited to talk a bit about these books and yeah, I hope you're having a really good week as well. So first up, I read this book here, The Language of Remembering by Holloway, and I really loved this. I thought this was such a beautiful piece of writing. So the core idea really is that we have a man called Oisin who is returning to Ireland after some time away, particularly in Brazil, and he has been he returns with his partner and their child, and the book really concerns itself a lot with language, as you'd probably expect a little bit from the title, but in a really, I think, interesting way. So when Oisin and his partner come first to Ireland, we have these little interactions of them speaking Portuguese to each other, and particularly these little moments around their child, who is also raised with this sort of bilingualism essentially going on. And the book kind of starts with that idea of a little bit of this idea of homecoming and return and what that might mean. But it soon becomes something really interesting off the back of that as well, which is that Oisin's mother is in a fairly late stage of Alzheimer's and sort of dementia, and is as a result forgetting lots of things. But as part of that forgetting, she is starting to revert back to speaking in Irish. And so what then happens is this odd interaction between them that is Bridget, the mother, speaking mostly in Irish as she's losing her faculties somewhat, and then it becoming a thing of this bridge between them that they can't quite get across, because she is trying to communicate with him, he can't fully understand. Equally, his partner is trying to adjust to Ireland and all these other things as well. So there's a lot going on around language and place and belonging and memory. And I just thought this was such an exceptional way of telling a literary story with a lot of heart, because the literary point being made around language is so fascinating, I think. And as someone who's a bit of a language nerd, I love that aspect of things anyway. But the book is so astute, I think, at finding descriptions to talk about what it means to start losing a sense of self and a sense of identity, and how much that language is the thing that helps us form that. We maybe think of ourselves through language in various ways. We think of ourselves using certain words or through certain memories that are attached to words or songs or whatever. And I just thought this was such a sensitively handled and beautiful, beautiful novel. As somebody who unfortunately has had to experience family members going through Alzheimer's and dementia, there are descriptions in this book that absolutely floored me for how perfect they were at distilling what it feels like to be sort of there with somebody who is forgetting and is struggling to process various thoughts or memories, and the ways that you keep reintroducing yourself to them or keep having similar conversations. I think this is such a beautiful, beautiful novel that I think already has just rocketed itself into, I think, one of my favorites of the year. It's so beautifully done, and it's such a clever and gentle book at the same time. I think this is wonderful. Next up, with a surprising amount of overlap actually with that book, with the last book, we have The Catch by Yrsa Daley-Ward. And this is a book that has been shortlisted for the Goldsmiths Prize, and which is how I came to hear of it. But I'm really fascinated by what this book is doing and achieving, because in many ways it just keeps on putting the reader on the back foot in a way that I think is really brilliant. So the core idea behind this book, at least how we start the book, is that we have two twin sisters, one of whom has recently published a novel called The Evidence that is stratospheric in success. It's been huge. She is going around touring parts of the book or talking about it quite a lot. And the book seems to have some personal touch to it, and she's often asked about how much of her real life is in that book, because it features twins, but one of the things that it also features are a set of twins who are aged 8, but their mother is also 8 years old at the same time. And so this obviously breaks many rules of sort of biology or physics or whatever, and so it's a bizarre book. And throughout the novel we have excerpts of this novel, The Evidence, as well. But what starts to happen is the two twins start to watch as parts of their lives are mirrored by this novel and not, to the extent where we start to have set up in front of us an idea that maybe something really surreal is happening, because either the novel is coming true, or one of them is, the writer of it is having some kind of, maybe not psychotic episode, but is sort of losing grip with reality and is thinking that these parts of the novel are real, or some other alternative that seems to keep popping up in the book. The idea that maybe somebody is out to trick her and is using details from the novel to suggest a real course of action, to almost get the information from that and say, oh, well, I must be your mother because XYZ, and using details from the novel, knowing that some of it must be true. But a lot of that is about these sisters and the relationship with their mother. And they, at the beginning of the novel at least, we think that the mother is dead until one of the twins sees her, or thinks she sees her, stealing a watch from a shop and then running and getting onto a bus. And she follows this one sister, I think Clara, follows her mother, well, the person she thinks is her mother, along this bus route, and there's this weird showdown in the flat and everything. Lots of things like that happen. But as this book goes on, it just keeps on morphing and changing and thinking, or like kind of putting you really more and more on the back foot in a way that I just think is so brilliant. This is such an uncomfortable novel in a good way. It's a novel that doesn't really want you to immediately understand it and go down a normal route. It's a novel that really asks you to keep interrogating various things, which I found really fun and interesting anyway. But there's something, and I won't spoil it, but there's something about the payoff towards the end of this book that I found really fascinating, of the way that it's able to build towards this idea of what might be the truth, in a way that is just so terrifying and interesting at the same time. I think it's a really interesting novel, and one that's really gotten itself under my skin as I've read it this week, in a really good way, I think. And last but not least, something a lot lighter and more of a fun-based book, Moving Pictures by Terry Pratchett. And I've been really enjoying going back and reading more Terry Pratchett, partly because I need some more comfort reading, and also just because he's so brilliant. And Moving Pictures, as the title sort of hints at, is essentially a Pratchett universe take on the invention of cinema. And so we have Hollywood all the way through being a sort of stand-in for Hollywood. But the book is just so utterly silly and absurd in the best ways, I think. All the way through, there are just regular puns and plays on words, or plays on references to do with the film industry. So at one point there are a set of female trolls, I think it's trolls, who start having very specific expectations from male trolls about romance, and the male trolls don't really understand this and keep on messing it up, but they are basing this on this sort of idealized sense of romance that you might get in cinema. But equally, at the same time, you've got these really silly film references that in some ways you start to see a mile off, but it makes the payoff that much funnier because you can see it slowly coming. You can see that Pratchett is crafting the narrative to get you there. So, you know, just I'm trying to think of a good example now. There's one about diamonds being a girl's best friend, and he slowly teases you up to the idea of getting to this pun, and the payoff is brilliant as a result. And it shouldn't work. It shouldn't. I found this sort of, I've really enjoyed the Terry Pratchett books I've read so far. I think about 10 or so that I've read, and they all make me laugh in different ways. This one I just found funny in just such a silly dad joke kind of way, and I was fully here for it. I think it's just great, and it's the kind of cozy, silly reading I think I've needed this week, and it's just been really good fun. So yeah, Terry Pratchett, what a man. And I think it's just so interesting to see as the series continues, the Discworld series, which is I think 40 something books, maybe 50, how the characters continue to grow, but they also still feel quite episodic. If you've not read any other Terry Pratchett, you can, for the most part, jump in and start on a new book. Oh yeah, for example, with this book as well, there's a dog that's talking, and I think is meant to be a stand-in for something like Lassie, you know, the kind of film dog that is very well known. All of that kind of silliness goes on in this book, and it's just so utterly stupid in the best way. I really enjoyed this, and I think this is just a great piece of fun, as well as just being a really readable and clever book. So yeah, gotta hand it to Pratchett on yet another one. I'm really excited to carry. This is not like the Booker project where I'm gonna sort of dedicate my whole channel, my whole life to this. So I didn't dedicate my whole life to Booker, but you know what I mean. But I think this is a project that I'm really happy to kind of keep going in the background, of giving myself an excuse to read more and more books by this wonderful man. Yeah, such a fun book. So those have been the books that I've been reading this week, these lovely ones here. I hope you are keeping really well and having a great week, and hopefully having slightly more sunshine than is currently happening in the UK. Take care, and speak to you all very soon. Bye bye.